Welcome to Psychology of Pilgrimage. In this episode, I am joined by historians Franck Viltart and Philippe Diest. It's very, very nice to see you both, Franck and Philippe. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, where we're going to be talking about the Michelin Guides, and in particular, Philippe's chapter from our edited volume, Pilgrimages to the Western Front of World War I. This chapter is remarkable in many ways, and it has changed the way that I see the guidebooks. I have many of the English guidebooks, and after reading the Philippe's chapter, I went back and looked at the guidebooks through the lens of what he discussed in the chapter, and I see them so differently now. We'll also be talking about the newer edition of the guidebooks, which was published by Franck a number of years ago. And I think these guidebooks are so central to our understanding of post-war pilgrimages, but also our understanding of how people are engaging with the battlefields currently. And so the first question that I have is for Philippe, and I'm curious about what were these guidebooks that were published right after the war?
Originally, Michelin company sold tires. So the more drivers drove, more they bought tires. To encourage people to use their vehicle more, in 19, the Michelin brothers published the first red books. I precise the color of the cover because it's important for what follows. Free of charge, these small guidebooks helped travelers on their journeys by providing practical information and a list of hotels and restaurants, like today is Red Books Michelin. At the end of the war, visit, pilgrimage, or tourism, it was a discovery during our symposium. Visit to the front line appear to be a way of contributing to the economic recovery of the devastated regions. Drawing on his experience, the Michelin company published its first illustrated guidebooks to the battlefield in 1917. For the third anniversary of the Battle of Marne. These guidebooks also contribute of a campaign against German guidebooks, because into their guidebooks, Germans claim that the German army was not responsible for the destruction. Between 1999 and 1921, 29 other guidebooks were published, each focusing on a city and the surrounding battlefields. After 1925, some guidebooks were improved. The guidebooks published between the two world wars were called blue guidebooks. Why blue? Because their covers were blue. It's the same color for the French uniform. They were also translated into English, Italian, and even German, for example, for the Verdun battlefield.
You use the word invaded regions, invaded areas versus occupied, and I'd like to hear why you selected this word and why it was also used within the guidebooks. I think it sets the stage for our understanding of how these original guidebooks were envisioned in terms of telling the French story of the war.
Yeah, the term invaded is used during the war and this term was preferred rather than occupied, because this word described a temporary state, that was soon to end. It means for people invaded, it means war continues, and they are not cowards or traitors. In same times, another refugees were named Boche du Nord. Boche is an insult to call German people. Why? Because French who live in free France said that refugees were infected by a German plague.
You noted in your chapter uh, an important conclusion, which is that you say the Mich this is in English, I've translated from the French. The Michelin Guides published in the aftermath of the Great War therefore strive not to differentiate invaded regions from other battlefields without, however, denying their specificities. Pilgrimages participate in the reintegration of these spaces into the nation while contributing to their economic recovery, even if only territories occupied closest to the front are concerned by these publications. I do have a question that I did not mention previously for either you, Philip, or Franck, which is this idea of reintegration of the communities and regions in France under this broad nation concept, and the role of these guidebooks in creating a comprehensive framework for integration and reintegration after the war.
Um, Alors, for remember, 10 French departments are invaded during 4 years. 4 years is very long during this period. During this period, people have not communication with the other side of no man's land. So they live another war. Another war. A French historian, Annette Becker, evoked outre-guerre. Outre-guerre, another war. Another war. Perhaps, Frank, it exists another, a better word for outre-guerre?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No. Different
Um,
word.
Yeah, different. Donc first, it's this situation. Another information is during the occupation, Germans use every every thing for his war efforts. So the end when Germans army retreat, they destroy a lot of infrastructures, bridge, oil manufactories. So it was necessary to have money to repair these destructions. And the invaded people are reintegrated into a victorious country. So it's very difficult for these people to feel victorious into after living under occupation during 4 years.
What I think very interesting in your paper, Philippe, it's in the guide, there's not so many consideration for the civilian people. The tourist goes on this destroyed land, destroyed city, but nothing is said about what they what they are now after the war, to live in these destroyed places. That's very, it's tourism, but they have no consideration about the civilians and the people who are living there.
Yes, there are a few photographs about condition of life for refugees who come back into their ancient birthplace for someone. It's how I say it. The subject of the Michelin Guidebook, it's not people, it's battlefields, and there is two exceptions into the Michelin collection. One for France, another for Belgium. It's the guidebooks for Lille. Lille is the main city invaded by German. Is a trophy claimed by German propaganda, like Brussels, the main city of Belgium. These two books focus on the invited experience for people, but during the itineraries of pilgrimage, there are no information for the condition of life for the refugee who come back.
Yeah, and to go in the sense of what either say this consideration of reintegration of the old territory, it's the same for Alsace, because you have 3 or 4 guides, 2 volumes just only for Alsace with the Michelin guides, one for Colmar and one for Metz, for the Moselle. And in a way, if you read this guide, tourist guide books, you have this feeling that now this territory come back to France with to their home, to their homeland.
There are some interesting photos in the book entitled The Americans in the Great War, which was published in 1920. I'm specifically focused in this book about Chateau Thierry and Bella Wood, and there are 2 quite poignant photos. One is of refugees coming home, so that photo does exist. And also there is a photo that's inside the home of one of the homes that was invaded, and it's quite evocative because it's inside this intimate space of a family's home, and the caption on this photo, let me just get back in, is also interesting. I've got to scroll through and get back to the photo. The caption is, "After a visit from the Germans, room in house at number 26 Rue Saint-Martin." And it's a small room that is completely destroyed and disheveled. And as a reader of this guidebook, it's quite emotional to see this personal space. This is not a battlefield per se. It's not even a large civil structure. It's the inside of someone's home. And so I think it is interesting also this focus on the ruins that extend into these intimate personal spaces. And I had not realized how much these guidebooks do focus on the ruin and destruction until after I read Philippe's paper. And then I went back. I have a collection of PDF versions of about 25 of the guidebooks. And I looked at them in light of this focus on destruction and ruins, and I saw them quite differently. I had initially been focused on looking at the pilgrimages or the pilgrim aspect, but then going back and seeing this narrative around ruins and destruction, it changed my view about what pilgrims were actually seeing in these initial years after the war. Uh, and the way their experience was shaped by how the words painted this view in the guidebooks of the destruction of these spaces.
This is very important to note that these guidebooks are illustrated guidebooks Michelin, and the publicity say the panorama of the war. It's very important that they give images, a lot of them. I think it's something like 4,000 images for all the Michelin battlefield guidebooks of World War One. So it's a representation of the war. This is very important to notice that the picture are very important. They support all the text for all the guides.
There are three reasons for the massive illustration of these guidebooks. One, for prepare pilgrimage. It's the first reason. Another, it's to preserve evidence of the German destruction. These books won't condemn German. We are at the afterwards, but immediately afterward. So Germans have to pay for reparation. And third reason, it's to preserve evidence of the desolation while reconstruction and vegetation threaten to erase landscapes.
You mentioned that the books were published in French, of course, but also in German and in English and I think Italian. Were each version of the books different, or they were exactly the same and just translated into the other languages?
For English translation is only a simply translation. For the guidebooks I read. For German is focus of on Verdun battle during the second half of 1920 years. Because it's a period of reconciliation between France and German. But I didn't read in guidebooks in German because I don't read German. It's a problem. But I know that recently there are a symposium about remembrance of Verdun, and a colleague worked on the German version of guidebooks of Verdun.
Franck, have you seen or read the German ones?
No, I never found the German one.
Really?
But the original one. But it's only the only one, as Philippe said, is for Verdun, and not for the other parts of the front. It's also very important to mention that there's not only Michelin who published the battlefield guidebooks. Goodyear did the same. You have the Goodyear. You have the Thomas Cook also. But there's no there's no illustration, or very very few. It's not like the Michelin guidebooks there. There's also a American Battle Monument Commission publish one guide to go on the American battlefields in France and Belgium, I think. But for Michelin, this illustration is very, very, very important, as Philippe said, to stigmatize, to show the destruction of France.
I have not seen the documentation. I have not been to archives yet for the pilgrimage guidebooks that then came later, the American Legion pilgrimage guidebook in 1927, the Royal British Legion pilgrimage in 1928, the Vimy pilgrimage in 1936. All had guidebooks that accompanied the pilgrimages, and they're very similar to the Michelin guidebooks in the sense that they describe aspects of the battle. They describe the sites. They also include photos, which are important for those respective countries. And it would be interesting to see, actually, if there is a direct connection between the Michelin guidebooks and these later pilgrimage guidebooks, because they are quite similar in their content, and also in the photos that are depicted in terms of devastated, ruined areas. How did these early guidebooks shape public knowledge of the war, but also collective memory of the war?
Yes, I am thinking about the response, the answer. Um, I- the interest of this books, it's the illustrative, the documentation, photo maps, photograph. So it's a way to see what we cannot see if we don't go on the battlefield. But another interest, it's the affordable price of these books. They were sold in everywhere, so you can bring it. So it's um, I would say it's a more simple kid books to bring during the interwar period, and even now you can bring it for a lesser price than other kid books.
Yes, they're widely available. That's how I ended up with so many. Is I purchased a digital file of, I think it's 25 of them. They're fantastic because they are readily available, and I actually enjoy having the PDF version because they're searchable. You can search by term or by a particular site and do the comparisons from guidebook to guidebook. So they're actually really fantastic artifacts. Were they used at all within the school system for children? Or they were only used for travelers and pilgrims?
The mission books is a proposed trip in small groups. In wide pilgrimage trains is for several hundred people. The small groups, it's a way to facilitate the spiritual preparation necessary to travel across the battlefield. And the documentation uh, offers practical information. When the first guidebooks were edited, there are no hotels, there are no gas station, and more later and later, the guidebooks have more information for comfort, for example.
This is an important part of your chapter, um, which is that you trace the evolution of the guidebooks from their early iterations in 1917 and then into the interwar period, and then the iterations that followed. What are some of the differences between these early guidebooks and what is available now?
Yeah, I think there are three main change. First change is historical, because the landscapes of war have disappeared. Visits to war relics are very rare, except where ruins have been preserved, for example. Visitors are now encouraged to discover places of remembrance, like as military cemeteries or war memorials. The second change is cultural. Um, with the shift from pilgrimages of remembrance by combatants and their family, and to remembrance tourism by people who don't know have personal ties to the places they visit. The guidebooks begin with an historical explanation that contextualizes the war and presents the specific features of the battlefield being visited. For example, originalities of invaded regions were not really highlighted because their occupation is unknown by a large part of the public. Moreover, this military occupation is confused with the Second World War occupation of the whole of mainland France. Third change is geographical, because visitors today have a greater mobility. Each of the three new guidebooks gather 4 or 5 older guidebooks and offers several areas to visit. However, when these itineraries take place in city, visitor cross the main tourist and commercial areas, while the old guidebooks offer much more varied city tours.
All of those are quite interesting. And of the three that you've just mentioned, the three changes, the focus on conflating the First and Second World Wars in these locations is the most fascinating to me. And it seems like this probably influences or has influenced then the need to have new editions for more contemporary readers and travelers and pilgrims. And I'm wondering, Franck, if this was a motivating factor for publishing new editions, so that travelers have accurate historical information, or are the new guidebooks also merging the two world wars together?
Um, the new edition of the Michelin Guidebook started just before the centenary of the First World War in 2013. The idea was to to do something, not to publish all the 29 originally guidebooks. But the idea is to offer, like for tourists, like Michelin wanted to offer the opportunity to discover the First World War battlefield like they were 100 years after. So it's changed the perspective because the people are not the same 100 years after, and there was not the concept of pilgrimage wasn't not so much present at the origin of the new edition. It was a tourism perspective. But my first reaction when I was contacted by Michelin is to do something with the sources, with the archives of these guidebooks. I was very interesting, but there nothing in Michelin's archives about the guidebooks of the First World War, because this I don't know if they are destroyed, if they existed, they still don't know where the archives of the guidebooks are, which is a big problem, because if you read the original guidebooks, you have no sources. You have no authors of the text. You don't know who wrote the text, and sometimes it's a little bit like literature, or sometimes it's very precise, and sometimes they use some testimony, or you don't know where it comes from. And for a long time, for 100 years, these guides were considered as the true, as the perfect truth, but without sources. So it was a little bit complicated as an historian to work on this guide without the original sources. And for the pictures, sometimes you can recognize the pictures taken by the army, but sometimes you have the pictures only in these guidebooks, but you don't know where the original photography are. So it was a big problem for me at the moment, because my idea was to do something like then and now. You know what I mean, on each side, but it wasn't possible to work like that. So we have to concentrate our propos to only what is very important now for the people to visit, and for 100 years we have more and more monuments. It's natural. You have a lot of museum that this didn't exist in the 20s. So we have to combine this then and now concept and the new equipments. But the logic of Michelin was the same, to organize the trip of the people with maps, with precise maps, and to propose itinerary. So it was for me the most interesting thing to do is to compose new itinerary, because for each guide you have different itinerary. You have to go there, and how long it takes to go from this place to this place, and you can do a one-day trip. Each itinerary is something like one-day trip. And you have for each region, for the Aisne, for the Somme, for the Flanders, you have this itinerary, just a one-day trip. And you have different one-day trip itinerary on each guide. But we try to not considering the Second World War sites in this new edition, and just focus on the First World War side. But it's a synthesis of the first edition, because for the first edition they use 3 or 4 guides of 3 volumes for one part of the battlefields, and now we have just one guide for example, for the Flanders, North, Ypres, Pas-de-Calais, North, it's just one guide. It's at the end of the century, we just published 6 new Michelin guidebooks.
What influenced the decision to create itineraries that were one day. Was that was this coming from the tourism Ministry of Tourism or local tourism offices that influenced you to say, well, it makes sense that we just do one day? Or how did you arrive at that particular length of time for these visits?
Just it's just a logistic problem. We we have to consider that the people have to travel with their car or with buses on all battlefields of the World War One, and you have so big distance between each side sometimes that that was very important to consider this logistical problem to drive from side to side. So um, this one-day trip is also an option to say, okay, if I want to do this in one day, what can I do? This, a museum, a site, this, and and if I want to do more, and I have to consider that it takes 2 days, 3 days more. But the people sometimes mix. They don't use our itineraries. They mix the different itineraries. But it was very important to have this itinerary to yes to measure the distance and also to offer the accommodation restoration to the people. This is the way that Michelin works.
I envision this uh, being a very interesting digital humanities project where the guidebook is online, but then it can also be in some ways crowdsourced, where military histories and personal blogs and photographs that people are taking, or maybe they have historical photographs, all fused together into a very dynamic, multi-dimensional guidebook, which would be a fascinating project. These guidebooks to me, I am very, very drawn to all of them for reasons I don't know that I can articulate. I think, though you both have, I mean, they're about national memory of war, they're about regional memory, they're about historical facts that are unverified. Uh, and they're also a way to, I think, what is the most interesting part of this is they're a way to make meaning of all of these devastated areas that sort of fall under um, the points are connected in a way that then a coherent narrative emerges about the war, even if civilians were not considered in the guidebooks, the experience of all of these displaced people are not mentioned. I think maybe even in a digital humanities project, these civilians could find a voice because maybe French families have information about the war and maybe they could add more context so that the civilian perspective is better represented. It's just they're fascinating pieces of work. Like you said, so they're sort of also infused with literature and this evocative imagery, and then also these local and national narratives. And in the case of the Americans, in the Americans in the Great War, even the word pilgrimage is used specific to Bella Wood, which I find fascinating. It's one of the earliest mentions in in a structured publication that I found of the word pilgrimage. So even that is a commentary on how Americans were engaging with this particular battlefield in leading up to 1920 when the guidebook was published.
Yes, Philippe, do you want to answer? I would just want to say that it was um, it should have been a huge work to do this guides without just at the end of the war without any precise archives with they have to use many photographs from everywhere to do maps to collect information. It should have been a very, very huge work, and I was very frustrated because I haven't found any archives of how they work to create this. Who, who has the team to did this huge work?
I don't have an answer for the questions, but I'm agree with Franck with the lack of information for the edition of the first guidebooks. For historians like me, these guidebooks are very interesting to understand the feeling after war and the tools that people who live after war can use to understand the war. Because to understand the first world is very complicated with propaganda and the testimonies of fighters.
The idea of creating pathways or ways to travel through the battlefields was not unique to Michelin. I'm thinking about of the demarcation stones that were also placed by the Touring Club of France, which is that related to Michelin? Are they a related organization?
No, I don't think so. They did but separate the touring club did his job, and Michelin was at this time a big company, and they do something different. And the touring club was more, they pay for this monument. They bring money to the people. The Michelin logic was more economic.
I see. And there was even a very interesting cycling competition in 1919. A colleague named Tom Issett wrote a book called Riding in the Zone Rouge, the tour of the battlefields in 1919. And this was for cyclists riding. And can you imagine cycling in these conditions with the roads are not fully present and there is destruction on the sides. So this idea of engaging with the battlefields through prescribed routes and pathways and points of interest seems to have been quite prominent from the time of the war itself, as Philip was talking about in 1917 forward. And that is an interesting way of conceptualizing how people make meaning of such a vast, tragic, multi-year, devastating event, and how the guidebooks can also create a common framework of meaning for people from all over the world who are a part of different armies and different military engagements, that having the guidebook then brings people together in a particular way because they are then seeing battlefields by these specific points through the guidebooks. How do you think people are using the current edition of the guidebook?
People continue to use the original one. It's I saw people using during the centenary the original edition, and because they are very precise with maps, and so to have the feeling to have an historical edition in your hands and go on the battlefield with this, it's a special feeling. It's different. I use the current one. The current one as a very for the people who want to make tourism, to travel, and but it's also very important to consider that people continue to use the old one.
Yes, it's interesting to say that Michelin Company was aware of the differences between these two approaches. The older is historical, and the other, the newer, is memorial and touristic, more touristic than the older. And Michelin invites a visitor to combine the centenary publication with those written 100 years earlier. It's very interesting. They are digitalized on ebooks format. I forget the word, and improved with new documents, which permit an understanding of the cultural evolution of war pilgrimage.
It is interesting to see the evolution and to hear about Michelin, the view of what they are seeing about battlefield tourism and pilgrimages, but also what they're prioritizing as important. And I have one question, last question, for Franck. Will the collection of guidebooks and or the new edition of the guidebook be central to your work with many of these sites becoming UNESCO World Heritage Sites?
Um, I I used to work for the two main tourist guidebooks in France, for Michelin and for Le Routard. We did also a special World War One guidebooks with Le Routard. And we prepare and we would like to do a new one for the World Heritage funerary and memory sites of the First World War. But for sure, we will consider the phenomenon of pilgrimage in this next edition, like the new pilgrimage. I liked this idea because during the centenary, the phenomenon of tourism for all the families were very important. The people discovered through these guides their own history. They go on the site. They use these guides as tools for visiting the site. But no, they want something more. Um, they want to have also accommodation, etc. But they need something more. They need to find a sense during their visit, and it will be very interesting to work on this new guidebooks in a way of pilgrimage.
That makes me happy to hear that, and of course, and it seems that this is similar to what people are looking for in all types of travel at the moment, which is a greater sense of meaning, specific rituals that connect them to the sites, and this personal connection that is expressed through a ritual type of practice, whether that's through lighting a candle or it's through leaving a small rock at a site, or it's bringing soil from their home to place on a grave. People are quite attracted at the moment to these ritual practices, and so I can see why that would be important. Even to have reflective spaces. I mean, many of these cemeteries are already reflective spaces where people can contemplate the meaning of war, and think about what reconciliation is and what peace looks like, which is a focus of this particular UNESCO initiative. And so, yeah, it seems like a really wonderful uh, time that's ahead, coming ahead, in the future for pilgrimages, and also pilgrimages specific to these sites that were important in the Great War, and also connecting current pilgrims and contemporary pilgrims with those pilgrims who came in the past. I think is a very important element of this pilgrimage focus, that not only are people wanting to connect with the military, the soldiers that fought and died, but they're also wanting to connect with the people who came after, especially during the interwar period. And so I think it's fantastic. What a time to be researching pilgrimages, and what a time to be working in the space of World War I remembrance. Thank you both for taking the time to speak with me. Philip, this chapter is phenomenal. I've translated it into English also. I have underlined and made notes on so many parts of it. You did a really remarkable job writing this chapter and helping my understanding of how the guidebooks were so important, and also continue to be important, and tracing this evolution. So thank you for contributing to our volume. And of course, Franck, thank you. I think I may be seeing a lot of you if we are going to be talking to our French colleagues about their chapters. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.